I was diagnosed in grade 5. It didn't really sink in, the effects of what CF was to me then. It was later on in my years that I really understood that it was going to take control of my life. After 30, I started getting a lot more chest infections, and I started making a lot of frequent stops at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I was there for 2 weeks at a time for chest infections, and this would happen every 6 months to a year. I'd be in for an admission. When I was 20, I was just drinking all the time, liquids. I couldn't get enough liquids, and I wasn't gaining any weight, and eventually it was diabetes. It turned out to be insulin-dependent diabetes. In my early 40s, 41, 42, my kidney started showing it wasn't functioning at a high enough percentage. And they did an ultrasound, and they found out I only had one kidney, which apparently only 5% of the public develops this, only one kidney. And because of only having one kidney and all the years of CF treatments for antibiotics and infections and stuff had taken its toll on that one kidney, and it was starting to fail. And 2 years ago, I started dialysis full-time, 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, just to stay healthy, I guess, basically.
I've been with Sheldon since 2005. We've been together. We married 10 years this August, and ever since I started dating Sheldon, he was in the hospital about 2 weeks, twice a year. That was like that at the start, and he was in pediatrics in Unit 5 at the QEH, and when I'd go down there, they'd welcome me in always with a smile, and they're so attentive to Sheldon and whatever he needs.
The care I received at QEH, it's ongoing. I'm there every second day with dialysis, and I'm there for same-day treatments for my CF treatment, as well as my diabetic issues.
When we started dialysis, it was scary. We didn't really know what to expect, but they always made us feel comfortable when we were there. And to me, I don't have to worry about him when I'm not there. I always feel he's looked after 110%.
Well, I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. There was a point 2 years ago where my family was called in and told that I might not make it through the weekend. And things turned for the better on the weekend. I improved, and I'm still here because of the QEH.
Krista Montgomery was elated to find out she'd be having twins, until complications brought the babies to delivery 9 weeks early. The family was forced to stay off island, but soon were able to come back to PEI for care at the QEH.
When we left the IWK, we were a little nervous. We weren't sure what the facilities were like or even what existed at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. But as soon as we arrived, we were just put so much to ease. The nurses, they just swooped in and took care of everything. They took care of our whole family, not just us. It was so wonderful. They all became instant friends, and it was just so overwhelming to have other people take care of your child in a way that you can't. It was great to come home. Hannah was 45 minutes away from home. Livia and I could come home every night and see Tyler and Haley and Jeff. I could sleep. It was wonderful.
Hannah in particular was in need of care, only weighing a little over 1 pound when she was born, and spent 9 months being cared for. And all that time spent with NICU staff gave the family a new appreciation for the QEH.
You wouldn't believe how much we felt like we were part of their family. It really was like that. For us to be able to come home to PEI, to the NICU and the QEH was amazing. We are extremely grateful for everything that they've done for us and everything they could do. And all the equipment they had available we wouldn't have been able to come here.
For these babies who are born prematurely, the course can go on much longer than expected. And in the case of Hannah, to be in the hospital for 10 months, you can only imagine the amount of stress that would place on any family, especially in the situation where one child is well enough to go home and another is still in hospital. That would provide a pretty significant difficulty for transporting and being together as a family, being able to sleep in your own bed, even to work, and support the rest of the children at home. So enabling people to stay in their home province, I think, lessens the stress of the illness on the family.
We were faced with a situation that was not ideal. We were very scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were scooped up by the staff at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and they saved us. They saved our daughter. Our daughter arrived to them at 3 pounds. She was 2 months old, and they grew a baby on the outside. They grew a baby in the hospital. It was amazing. Dr. Morrison was her pediatrician. She was wonderful. She treated Hannah as if she was her own daughter. She scooped us all up, our entire family, and just inched us along, just took us to where we are today.
Finding your calling can be a complicated process, but for PEI professional wrestler Cowboy Mike Hughes, it began with a chance encounter.
In 1998, I met a couple of pro wrestlers, Edge and Christian and Glenn Kolka, at a gym. Glenn Kolka wanted a workout partner that day, so we were talking in the juice bar that was out front of the gym, and we hit it off, and he said, I think maybe you should give wrestling a try. And at the time, I thought I wasn't big enough. Oddly enough, I was 6'5.5" and 280 pounds at the time, and he said, look at those two guys over there, and he pointed at Edge and Christian. He goes, those two skinny guys are in wrestling, you should give it a try. And
though he was a lifelong fan of pro wrestling, Hughes soon found out it wasn't the glamorous profession he thought it was.
Glamorous life of pro wrestling.
it was very different, because when you see on pro wrestling, you don't understand the dues that you have to pay in pro wrestling. There's not a lot of money in it at first. You're not flying around in jet planes and stuff like that. It was wrestling twice a night. I was on the ring crew. I set up and tore down the ring by myself every night. I was on the road 157 nights straight. So, it was a baptism by fire kind of. So it was a great experience though, and I wouldn't have it the easy way now that I've done it the hard way.
Over the years, Hughes has traveled the world, from Europe to the Caribbean to Japan, and he feels the experiences he gained more than make up for the sacrifices he's had to make.
And for a small-town guy from Stratford, Prince Edward Island, to be able to travel the world and not just go in and visit as a tourist, but to be able to live there and immerse myself in the culture, and to be able to learn a little bit of different languages. By the second year in Puerto Rico, I could have conversations in Spanish. Learning to live with different cultures while wrestling is one of the greatest educations he's experienced in the world.
For the past 10 years, Hughes has operated Red Rock Wrestling, a promotion in Prince Edward Island. After some negative experiences with some less than reputable partners, he felt he needed to take promoting on the island into his own hands.
I love pro wrestling. I absolutely love it. And I hated the thought that that's what pro wrestling was being looked at within the business community. So I knew that if I went out on my own and I did things and I could handle everything myself, that I could help get rid of that stigma that pro wrestling was starting to become greasy. Making sure that hotels always got paid, arenas always got paid. When I shook somebody's hand on a deal, that it was going to happen no matter what. So we started doing more fundraiser and charity work, where 100% of the proceeds that we raised for these charities went to them.
In December, Red Rock Wrestling held an event in Stratford, PEI, that featured a steel cage main event, a first for the province.
I want it PEI to experience the electricity that's in the air with a cage match. All our shows are amazing, and a live event at Red Rock Wrestling. I'm biased, of course, but you've been there, you see it. There's just a special electricity more than most independent pro wrestling shows. Prince Edward Island has supported me and created this atmosphere that has become known worldwide, and wrestlers want to come here and wrestle at the Stratford Town Hall and be a part of Red Rock Wrestling. The best feeling in the world when the match has gone exactly how you want it. The crowd has either met your expectation or exceeded it, which it did the night of the steel cage. It exceeded it completely. When that referee counts 1, 2, 3, and that explosion at the end of it, and the release and the relief, it's a combination of things that you really have to experience to be able to know what I'm talking about.
After 20 years, many injuries, and countless matches, Hughes knows his career won't last forever, but his love of pro wrestling will never fade.
I don't think I'll ever be done with the wrestling business. As far as that, I'll be a part of it as long as the wrestling business will have me. As far as in-ring, my body will determine that. That won't be my decision. I'll do it as long as I can. Before, the goal was always get to WWE, make $1 million, be a superstar, have my WWE lunchbox and all that kind of stuff. And then now it's to develop Red Rock Wrestling to the best brand it can be. We have some of the largest crowds, the loudest crowds, with the smallest population on the smallest province in the country. And that's just because of the support that I get from Islanders.
In Stratford, I'm Brody Callahan for Eastlink Community TV.